Dane Laffrey joining me, the Tony-nominated scenic designer of Once on This Island. Congratulations on that, sir. Thank you for
Thank you
sitting
so
down with us.
much. Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to be with you.
I know this is Once on This Island is your now second Broadway collaboration with Michael Arden, the director,
Yes.
who's also Tony-nominated. I know you guys have had several other, you've worked together a lot. Can you discuss how you both met and how you came to be collaborators together?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually met a really long time ago. We were at boarding school together for our last 2 years of high school at a place called Interlochen Arts Academy, which is in northern Michigan. And we were roommates there and have been really, really close friends since like 1999. So we've known each other a really long time. But Michael was an actor for many years and kind of came to directing a little bit later in his career. And it's sort of, I think, once that kind of impulse struck him and that became a thing that he felt like he really had something, had something to offer in that vein that felt more, I think, profound to him than acting. I think I was sort of the first person he came to sort of say, like, these are projects I'm interested in. What does this mean? What do we think this looks like? So we've kind of, I think we feel like primary collaborators for each other now. And that was, he really that we, really small stuff out in LA. And since then have done Spring Awakening, which eventually came to Broadway, but had really, really humble beginnings in like a funny, like in sort of downtown performing arts center in sort of like off of Skid Row in LA. That was our first sort of like realized collaboration that, had a proper theater and a proper run. And that obviously like went so much further than we could have possibly imagined it would when that was like started. But, and then since then we've done, obviously Once on This Island, we've done a big Merrily We Roll Along out in LA, which we really loved. We did a My Fair Lady. We're working on a bunch of stuff coming up. So yeah, it's really it's both personally, but also professionally. And we have so much shorthand with each other and can, skip over a lot of bullshit, frankly. We can really get to the core of the matter really expeditiously, which is great.
Well, for Once on This Island, then, what was sort of the initial concept discussions about it? Did you have any like preconceived ideas coming into it, or did it just start out of the original talks?
Well, for me, not really. I mean, I hadn't thought about that piece in years. I feel like it was a soundtrack that I listened to after it had come out in the mid 90s and really like remember liking the score a lot and like listening to the soundtrack, but I had never seen it. And Michael had been thinking about it for a long time. I think he saw a concert in New York. I think it was like right after September 11th, where it was a like original cast reunion, like in concert at the Winter Garden. And I think I think that really stuck with him as a kind of a really powerful moment, and it was early in his time in New York, and I think that really like stuck in his mind, and the sort of power of that piece, particularly in a moment like that where the city was so broken, and that I think he found it to be really like cathartic and healing. And then skipping forward a decade. Or more than a decade, obviously, he, was thinking more and more about it. And I think his initial impulse was about sound. It was about the music. It was about the notion that, if you were encountering a community of storytellers after a natural disaster, how do they tell this story and how do they make the music? How do they create the score? And so there's the idea of the sort of found instruments and a very vocal heavy orchestration, I think was one of his earliest impulses, and the people he was talking to before me were Anne-Marie Milazzo and Michael Starobin, who did the orchestrations, or both nominated for a Tony. And then I think I was probably about the second, and then he talked to Ken Davenport about it, and said, is this something you'd be interested in? Can we pursue getting the rights? And then he talked to me about it, and I was like, oh, Once on This Island, right? I remember Once on This Island. But then so in looking at it, I was just like, well, what is it? I'd certainly never like read the libretto. And I mean, it's mostly sung through. So you get a pretty good sense of the whole story just by listening to the cast recording. But right. I'd never seen a stage direction or any information about the setting. And in delving into it, even quite superficially, it was very clear that the sort of history of the island that's being described is Haiti's history. Yeah. It describes the slave revolution in Haiti that made Haiti the second liberated colonial country after the United States in the Western Hemisphere. And all of the gods in the show come directly out of Afro-Haitian voodoo practice. And I was like, oh, well, okay, so this is set in Haiti. That was the first kind of like moment of contextualization for the piece for me. And then I thought, well, that's pretty profound, because Haiti is a place that is deeply troubled and has been battered by natural disasters, certainly by hurricanes, but by this incredible earthquake in 2011 that just ravaged that place. And we thought, well, if that, if we're going to tell this story in 2017, 2018, we've got to be honest with ourselves and responsible about portraying that place in a way that takes all of those things into account and becomes a story about and a celebration of that community and that community's story and that community's catharsis and healing through storytelling. And so that became the like jumping off point for all of us. And we showed in a meeting before Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty had given Ken and Michael the rights to pursue this for another Broadway run. We sat down with them and looked at a bunch of pictures of what that looked like. And with Anne-Marie and Michael in conversation about the sound and that look, and how if you took that kind of environment and you picked something up off the ground and like made music out of it, what does that mean? And is that, a way into this musical? And is that how we create the storytelling frame for it? And I think they all pretty immediately were like, yeah, that seems right. That seems like how we do it. If we're going to revive this thing, we're going to, about it or folkloric about it. We're going to be like honest about it. We're going to talk about what it is and what it means today.
And I heard, well, I guess for anyone who is watching this who has not seen Once on This Island, one, go, because it's amazing from top to bottom. Two, the set, it's in Circle in the Square, which is theater in the round, and that you walk in and it's sort of immersive from the first step inside the theater. And there's clotheslines along the walkways, and there's a pit. The stage is a pit of sand, and there's a waterway and a toppled telephone pole. And you took a research trip to Haiti, I read. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Was there anything? Can you just speak on that a little bit? Like, was there anything that you directly incorporated into your design based on that trip?
Yeah, absolutely. That trip kind of changed everything for us. And I think, and I've talked a lot about it, and which has helped me to like sort of wrap my head around what that meant. And I think that really why it created a seismic shift for us is that our focus in the research had been on images like post-disaster. There's a lot of media saturation in a situation like, an earthquake of that magnitude, or what Hurricane Matthew did after that, and the sort of like layering of epic Baroque destruction. And that's where our heads were at and what we were focusing on. And so the sort of design we were making was really like about this kind of epic cataclysm and somehow people inside that. And when we experienced Haiti for ourselves, that's all there, of course. Like those things happened and they are like in a recovery mode, and there's a lot of work to be done. And that is, is a place that's like it suffers from incredible institutional poverty and lack of infrastructure. And like it's a slow go to rebuild, but it's happening. It begins to happen immediately. You begin to dig out as soon something like this happens to you. We were given access to these incredible images that were taken by the Haitian government's first responders to the southern part of the island after Hurricane Matthew, parts of which are still inaccessible. It's not a place we were able to go. And what you see is these like flattened houses and communities that are just like don't exist anymore, except like, you've got the clothes out and you're hanging to dry and you're sorting through your stuff and you're trying to see what's left, and you are immediately rebuilding. And that's the thing that we had sort of missed in the research, was the immediate dynamic forward movement towards regrowth. And that changed everything for us, because instead of like a design where you walked into Circle in the Square and it looked like a natural disaster had just occurred, I think you walk into Circle in the Square and you're like, oh, well, like a lot's gone on here. And maybe it's numerous natural disasters and things have affected the environment that we place in the theater and also the theater itself. But there's a lot of like rebuilding going on. We have like scaffoldings have been erected and we're rebuilding like the cinder block walls of the theater that have fallen in. And we, are like, have, clothes on the wall for sale, and we're drying our laundry, and like we are a dimensional, layered community persisting in this, irrespective of the circumstances, and like going on and sharing our stories. And that, I don't think we could have really known that without being there. The imagery was too, there's such powerful images that come out of these things, and we felt like, well, surely that's the way, but that wasn't the way. It had to be so much more nuanced and complex than that.
And speaking of the Circle in the Square, I imagine that designing in the Round, it's the only theater in the Round on Broadway. What was the most challenging part of adapting a design to that space?
Well, the first thing was, strictly speaking, it's not a theater in the Round. Circle in the Square is a thrust theater. So what you get with the building is seats on three sides and the floor, and it kind of has like a proscenium at the end and like a stage. And it's frequently used in the Round, but all of that is something you have to design for yourself. So that was actually the first thing to do, was like to try and figure out what the theater was going to be and how we were going to like create the on stage seating and sort of like complete the circle, which actually took quite a lot of like trial and error to get the right number of seats. And we were eliminating seats for certain things, like the flooding event at the far end of the space and the downed power pole, which kills a bunch of seats in the middle. And so we're figuring out how to get the right number of people in, but also to really get that sense of a complete arena and something that like is a continuation of the existing architecture. Is you could fit a lot more seats in there if you did like a flatter thing in the end, if it were sort of like, less curved and more stacked up, but it doesn't feel like the rest of the room. And I think what we've done in the first time that I can remember in that theater is sort of complete the architecture of it and create additional theater architecture in the form of walls that are sort of like falling in around that to make it seem like it's a theater in the Round that's had a sort of like interruption to it, even though it's not. So that was sort of the first challenge. And then, otherwise, basically, it's like the greatest gift we could have been given. I don't think we'd be seeing the same kind of show in any of the other Broadway theaters, even though they're beautiful and amazing. There would be, some incredible juxtaposition between the like glorious, Beaux-Arts architecture and our, sandy wrecked 18-wheeler crashed island. But I think the idea that you can like walk in the door and begin to have an experience, and so that by the time you've reached your seat, you feel like you've been transported, you've gone somewhere else before the story's even begun. we would the same way original production of this show, which I think has been such a gift and so important. And really, like, the challenge then always is just that there's nowhere to hide for anyone. It's the same challenge that Michael has, that the performers have, that I have, that all the other designers have. It's like, you can't hide anything in there. Everything is visible. So I needed to design every inch of that room to be something that I wanted the audience to see and take in. There's no backstage, there's no off stage. It's all on stage. So that was just, you know, a great labor of love, but it took a lot of time.
Right. Is there, I wonder, because something I've noticed about your designs, on Broadway, you have the Spring Awakening Deaf West production, you did Fool for Love, and you sort of have, at least to my layman eyes, a sort of sense of purposeness in small little elements rather than, like, you know, King and I with a boat sailing out into the audience or something. Mm-hmm. Do you design with a specific aesthetic in mind, or is it just brought on by whatever show you're working on?
I mean, the short answer is it's of course brought on, but, you know, the starting point, the text, the music, whatever, like that is the germ of everything, and that's totally different project to project. But I mean, I also think any artist brings their own aesthetic and point of view and a commitment to certain things to every project. And I certainly bring my own, and things that I think, yeah, I mean, given the way you phrase the question, like, I'm not very interested in, like, decorative things. I'm very interested in things that have purpose. I'm very interested in real things that have their own kind of, like, power and resonance because they're not fake. They haven't been custom constructed. They are just, like, real and recognizable, and we can feel them. And you sort of, like, you look at something like that truck in Once on This Island, and you're like, that's a real truck. Like, that's not something that was created for this production. That was, like, pulled off the road and chopped up and painted, but it's, like, it's real. And I think you can feel that. You can hear it when the door closes. You can't replicate that stuff. So yeah, I think I would say that I think I have certainly a commitment to the sort of muscularity that comes out of committing to not creating a lot of illusionistic stuff.
Well, the Tony nominators certainly liked it. You're nominated in a category with a bunch of Broadway veterans. What was the reaction like when you heard your name called?
I was so excited. It was basically completely surreal. I mean, I feel like one of the things that, you know, if you're a theater kid, as I was in the Midwest, I think the first things you know about are, like, Broadway and the Tony Awards, and watching the Tony Awards and watching performances on the Tony Awards and recording them on VHS and rewatching them. So I was guilty of all of those things. So to hear your name in that context felt kind of unbelievable. So I was just, and I'm, you know, I remain completely sort of awestruck and grateful and humbled to be nominated. In the company of people who've been doing it a lot longer than I have. So that it's totally amazing. It's totally amazing.
Well, one question here before I let you go. I'm just curious, with everything about the Haiti trip you described and everything you've put into this, what's the one thing that you really hope audiences take away after seeing the performance?
Wait, I'm so sorry. You dropped out for like 15 seconds in there. So after the Haiti trip?
What's the one thing you really hope that audiences take away after they see Once on This Island?
I hope they feel like they've seen something unique that is told in a way that is modern and honest and has sort of a commitment to the truth and the power of the story to, like, bridge divided things. I think that the great hopeful lesson of Once on This Island is that there is a possibility that exists to heal division, and it comes, I hope, in a time where it's very needed. story. This frame is a somewhat fantastical fable with gods and a sort of mysterious young girl who like bridges this divide and gets transformed into a tree. I think what, you know, as we lens out from that and we and come back to our very recognizable community of storytellers who are very much living in the present and not the past, that we can understand the connection between a story like that and the contemporary world and why it's important. And so I hope that that's what the takeaway is, or some part of the takeaway. But then again, I think audiences take away what they take away, and I think that's what they should be allowed to do. So that's good.
Well, awesome. We will leave it there. Congrats on incredible work and your Tony nom for Once on This Island, and wish you best of luck in June with the ceremony.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for talking with me.